48 countries played in the 2026 FIFA World Cup finals, 16 more than last time. That opened the door for some tiny countries, like Cape Verde, population 500,000, and Curacao, population just 150,000. They made this World Cup feel like the biggest ever. They also made two absences, impossible to ignore. India has 1.5 billion people. China has 1.4 billion. That's about 9,000 times more people than Curacao. Yet neither found 11 good enough at football to qualify for the World Cup.
For heaven's sake, in India, 150,000 people is a medium-sized wedding party. That really hurts.
But the strangest part isn't that China and India aren't in this World Cup. It's that they're never in the World Cup. China has just one appearance. India has 0. That's fewer than Wales, Haiti, or even North Korea. You'll often hear that China and India simply don't prioritize football. They prefer and dominate other sports. And while that's partly true, I don't believe it lets them off the hook for the World Cup. Because according to the data, China has 200 million football fans, and India has 136 million. That's more than some countries who make the World Cup all the time. So the question isn't why aren't China and India interested in football? It's how come they can't turn a huge amount of interest into talent?
It's a matter of great frustration to me. There does not seem to be a sense of national outrage.
And what's possible if they could?
Football is the sport. China knows this.
Any country that wants to make the World Cup, let alone play well in it, has to turn its children into elite players. Pretty much all of them use a system shaped like a pyramid. At the foundation is the most basic necessity: space to play. Whether it's pristine grass pitches, a turf field, or a concrete lot with some goalposts, the more the better. Europe has more than 400,000 pitches. That gives as many kids as possible a way to play, even casually. In the middle, there are organizations that keep kids playing as they age. That could be in school, in weekend games, or in academies. Further up are layers of football leagues. In England, there are more than 11 levels, ranging from semi-professional leagues all the way to the very professional $8 billion a year English Premier League. Ultimately, a pyramid should work like a conveyor belt, delivering talent to the national team, which plays at the World Cup. The most effective pyramids are wide at the bottom and virtually seamless all the way to the top. That allows prodigies like France's Kylian Mbappe to be spotted young and accelerated toward the national team. And for late bloomers like Germany's Deniz Undav to get a second chance. At 14, Undav was dropped from a club academy for being too small. While working in a factory, he kept playing in a low professional league, then slowly rose all the way to the national team. Without that low professional league, Undav might have quit. Instead, he was Germany's breakout star at this World Cup, scoring 3 goals in the first 2 games. Now, India and China's problem isn't that they don't have football pyramids. It's that theirs don't look anything like this. And India's is in the worst shape. Running a business often means using one app for sales, another for accounting, another for inventory, and one app to keep track of all that information. That's a recipe for chaos. Luckily, there's a solution. Odoo brings that all into one connected platform, and I'm happy to have them sponsor this episode. With Odoo, a new customer can enter through your website and automatically appear in your CRM. From there, your team can send a quote, turn it into a sales order, check inventory, schedule delivery, and send an invoice, all without copying the same information from system to system. And because every Odoo app works together, your sales, accounting, marketing, and operations are all working from the same up-to-date information, all in one highly centralized place. You can start with the applications your business needs now and then add more as you grow. So instead of paying for a collection of disconnected tools, you can run your entire business in one place. Thanks to Odoo for supporting our work. If you want to start your free 14-day trial, go to this link or use the QR code. Thanks again to Odoo for supporting my work. Now we'll get you back to the story.
There was a time, before my time, in the 1950s, when India was a serious football-playing country.
Bobby Ghosh writes about geopolitics and, when he can, football.
India was an Asian power. India made it to the semi-final stages in the Olympics. It was invited to participate in the World Cup. There are all kinds of legends around why it didn't go.
One held that FIFA wouldn't let India's team play barefoot. In reality, India preferred to focus on the Olympics. What India may not have realized is that it was passing on its best chance to play in a World Cup. In 1971, India beat its former colonizer, England, in cricket.
That's going to be it, giving India victory here in the Oval Test match.
The victory set off a wave of national pride that exploded a decade later when India became world champions. By the 2000s, cricket was king, and India invested heavily in a cricket pyramid, while neglecting to build a football pyramid. At the bottom, there simply aren't enough ways for Indian kids to play. In its 2023 strategy documents, India's Football Association admits that there is relatively low participation because of irregular level of formal activities, lack of facilities, and not enough trained personnel. Countries in FIFA's top 100 typically have between 0.7 and 5 licensed coaches per 10,000 people. India has just 0.06. Even the kids who start playing often run out of places to play. In 2023, there were less than 100 development clubs, according to the All India Football Federation. The very few players who make it into India's Super League have to deal with constant chaos.
When the AIFF put the Indian Super League's commercial rights up for sale, no one showed up.
No fixtures, no answers, only uncertainty.
Players are begging, clubs are collapsing, Indian football is bleeding.
While the Pro League fights to survive, the national team is hamstrung by problems with its governing body. The All India Football Federation officials are constantly accused of corruption and harassment. In 2022, it was temporarily banned by FIFA. The result is a messy patchwork of a pyramid that doesn't develop nearly enough talent to make a good national team. India's highest FIFA ranking in the past decade is 94th. There is one functioning part. In northeastern India, more people prefer football over cricket. And they've built their own mini pyramid with a bottom, middle, and top. As a result, northeast India often supplies almost half of the players on the national team. But India needs more than one region to make the World Cup. India started qualification with a win over Kuwait, but was eliminated after losing to Afghanistan at home. Bobby's concerned how little outrage it caused.
The same 6 people and their dog, myself included, who agonize about this every 4 years are agonizing about it again. I've not detected anything to suggest that a larger group of people are upset.
The decades of disappointment seems to have stuck Indian football in a vicious cycle.
Not enough people are interested enough for a politician to care. And because a politician doesn't care, there's not going to be a change. And because there's not going to be change, people are not going to care.
But while India isn't trying hard enough to get better at football, China's trying too hard. Xi Jinping loves football. While climbing the Communist Party ranks, he was pictured playing football, collecting jerseys, and he often expressed 3 wishes for his country. 1. Qualify for the World Cup. 2. Host the World Cup. 3. Win the World Cup. That made Xi a powerful ambassador for what seemed like the only sport China wasn't good at. For decades, the party identified and controlled young athletes' development. The top-down approach turned out champion divers, gymnasts, and table tennis players, but never a very good football team.
Football has to be a grassroots sport, which means bottoms up.
Journalist Mark Dreyer wrote Sporting Superpower after more than a decade covering Chinese sports.
If you think about a diver who wins Olympic gold, they want to be able to do the exact same dive again and again and again with absolutely no difference between the dives. If you think about a football player who does the same move again and again and again, they very quickly become pretty easy to defend against. So you need creativity, you need flair, you need the opposite skills.
China's men's football team failed to make a World Cup until 2002. It scored 0 goals and conceded 9. A humiliation that Xi was determined to redeem once he became China's leader. In 2015, his government released a master plan that said all the right things. China would build its pyramid starting at the bottom. It pledged to build 70,000 pitches, 20,000 training centers, and get 30 million children playing football regularly in school. It promised to strengthen the middle with academies and advanced leagues, and at the top, help turn the Chinese Super League into one of the world's best. It encouraged corporations to buy Super League clubs and sign stars that would theoretically improve the competition. The ensuing spending spree made even Europe break a sweat.
Chinese teams spent more in the first 2 months of the year than the top Italian, French, German and Spanish leagues combined.
Real Madrid, PSG and Chelsea are no longer the hunters, but instead have become the prey.
China's master plan looked great on paper until it crashed into reality. Millions of young kids started playing football, but most had to stop once they became teenagers. Preparing for China's very rigorous Gaokao exam left little room for sports. It left a huge gap that prevented all but the very best from rising into the development programs. There, they were subject to relentless drilling that didn't make them great football players, no matter how hard the state tried.
Doesn't have the patience for implementation. How can we turbocharge this? How can we shorten the time? The answer is you can't, but that's not an answer that they want to hear.
Then the lucky few to reach the Super League faced constant dysfunction.
First, China postponed the season when COVID-19 hit. Then a real estate crisis crippled owners' finances and eventually caused several Super League clubs to fold. When things couldn't get any worse, a match-fixing scandal erupted.
The former head of China's Football Association being given life sentence for taking bribes.
Chinese football has handed lifetime bans to 73 people for match fixing.
The reputation of the league is being tarnished, an own goal for Xi Jinping's great dream.
To make matters even worse, the party divided the pyramid between political bodies and every few years assigned new leaders, regardless of experience. Like the one who told Mark the national team's problem was pulling players from rival Super League clubs.
And I'm thinking, well, yes, that's just how it works, how it works all over the world. But this guy was thinking like, oh, I've got a brainwave. And I looked up his background. This guy had recently been promoted from the sewage and waterworks treatment department. Non-footballing people making footballing decisions.
China tried to engineer a football pyramid from the top down and ended up starving its national team of talent. By 2026, it was ranked 91st in the world and failed to make another World Cup.
China was eliminated by Indonesia. Obviously, China's a long way from winning a World Cup. But Xi Jinping seems to have also abandoned his dream of hosting one.
I think that the calculus from the senior leadership is that any soft power benefits from hosting the World Cup would be severely outweighed by the humiliating performance by the national team on the pitch. And so they figure, well, we don't want to do that.
Neither China or India are investing in the resources or time needed to make the World Cup. But why aren't they using a shortcut? Cape Verde and Curacao didn't make the World Cup with only native-born players. Both recruited foreign-born players whose parents and grandparents were native-born, something FIFA has allowed for decades. 15 of Cape Verde's 26 players were born abroad, as were 25 of Curaçao's. These players lifted their teams through qualifying and, for Cape Verde, into the knockout rounds. India and China also have diasporas, big ones, but neither is recruiting many players from them. One reason is citizenship. While Cape Verde and Curacao allowed their players to keep their original citizenships, China and India require players to become solely Indian or Chinese citizens. That's something few are willing to do, especially while China and India's teams are terrible. Back in the 2010s, China convinced some Brazilian-born players to switch, but they didn't make a difference on the national team.
I think, honestly, the problems run much, much deeper than that, and it wouldn't be fair to expect a couple of foreigners to come in and suddenly turn things around.
India is leaving more talent on the table, especially in Europe. There are several players on European clubs that are eligible to play for India's national team under FIFA's rules. But until India's government changes its rules, they can't.
If you ask people for an explanation, you don't really get a good one. There's a lot of hemming and hawing, and eventually what it comes down to, well, it's always been this way. It makes no sense.
That could change if the government passes a proposal to create a sports passport that would allow dual nationals to represent India. A few foreign players won't turn India into a World Cup contenders overnight, but it could lead to a surprise win. And India knows better than any country what a surprise win can do for a sport.
Success breeds success and breeds more interest. I think something similar needs to happen with football.
If there's anything I've learned from this World Cup, it's that the rest of the world is getting better. A lot better. Tiny countries took on giants and held their own. They used this World Cup to get on the map and gain the kind of soft power that goes beyond football. So it's strange to see two rising superpowers miss out on all that because of their governments. India's government has to realize what a difference a little change can make.
India wants a permanent place in the Security Council. India wants to host the Olympics. India wants to be counted among the world powers. Being good at football, on top of all the other things that India has to offer, that would be a cherry on the cake.
And China's government needs to gain a little patience and give up a little control.
I personally think it would be fantastic for China, but without China changing its system, it's not going to be able to allow this grassroots system to flourish. And China's not going to change its system.
On the bright side, China and India are closer than they think to a World Cup. They have the manpower and more than enough interest. All right, thanks so much for watching. That's the end of our World Cup coverage. We did 4 videos, one on FIFA, one on the Arab teams, one on Mexico's Azteca Stadium, and then this one. So if you haven't seen those previous ones, check them out. If you want to get more involved in my work, please check out newpress.com. It's a place where you can tell me about your city, your country, your team. I've been getting story ideas from New Press members. It's $60 a year right now to join New Press, so check that out. I look forward to seeing you there, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with new stories. See you then.